This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek. The last week of July, the UAW, United Automobile Workers, held a constitutional convention in Detroit. And for the first time in the history of the UAW, there was actually a discussion, debate about election of candidates by the rank and file. And this is an historic development. And joining us today is Scott Houldierson. He's a former vice president of UAW 551 in a Ford plant in Chicago. He's also a co-chair of United Auto Workers for Democracy. And he went to the convention as a delegate and was involved in organizing to fight for a Democratic convention. So welcome to Workweek, Scott.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Steve.
There's been a fight in the UAW for democracy for many years. You face what's called the Administration Caucus. What are some of the problems that members have had around this issue of the domination of this Administration Caucus and what they're preventing the membership from trying to do?
Well, you know, the membership has the ability, and every convention, they send in resolutions about the direction that they'd like to see our union go, about reforms that they'd like to see enacted. And unless they're blessed by the Administration Caucus, they wind up in a what's called a submitted resolutions book, and basically are tabled. You have to have about 15% of the delegates to agree with you to bring anything out of that booklet. You know, it's basically taking it out of committee because the committee tabled all those. So to bring it out of committee at this past convention, it was 136 delegates. The last time anything was taken out of committee was at a bargaining convention, not a constitutional convention, and it was back in 1985, I believe, 84 or 85. So it's been a very long time since anything is that the rank and file put forward has been brought out, unless it had the blessing of the Administration Caucus. And the Administration Caucus has ruled the UAW since 1947.
And over the last couple of decades or several decades, there have been a two-tier wage system set up in the UAW. You've had concession bargainings. The UAW has lost one election after another in the South of auto plants, foreign auto plants that have been built in the South and in Kentucky. All these issues, it seems like, are critical issues for the UAW.
Oh, they absolutely are. You know, they've sown division within our union, and they were sold to us as, you know, job-saving concessions, right? Yet our membership has you know, dropped or been flat since those concessions were enacted, especially the tiered wage and benefit structure. You know, it was first introduced in 1997 in the agricultural implement sector of the UAW, and you know, you called the UAW United Auto Workers. We are a very diverse union. We're not just auto workers, also folks that make parts for autos, but beyond that, agricultural implements, aerospace technology. You know, we have Bell Helicopter and some other plants, and now we have a very large contingent of graduate student workers, both on the East and West Coast.
And this issue of democracy in the UAW, what's your view of the kind of structural changes you want to see for democracy in the UAW?
Well, we've come a long way in the last year. So last fall we had a referendum for the ability to change the way we elect our international officers. Previously, it was at a convention, a constitutional convention that was tightly controlled by the Administration Caucus. And last fall, we passed the referendum vote to switch to a direct voting system where every member is going to get an opportunity to vote on who represents us at the highest levels of our union. And you know, that potentially can be a game changer, but it's not a game changer on its own. It's going to take rank and file workers coming together to support candidates that are going to, you know, put their vision forward.
And this last convention, what were some of the issues that did come to the floor and were debated at the convention?
Well, it was pretty amazing. We were able to pull out of committee. In other words, we had the 136 votes, several different issues. One, we wanted to put a rejection of tiers into our Constitution. We got that. We brought that out of committee with 282 delegates supporting it. It ultimately failed to get put into our Constitution, but there was robust debate about the issue, and most of the delegates that spoke against putting it into our Constitution were wanting to get rid of tiers, but just didn't want it, thought the proper place was in contract negotiations at our special contract or a special bargaining convention next year. So, you know, we made sure that the issue of tiers was brought front and center to the Constitutional Convention delegates. Another issue, when the rules were coming out, there had been a couple of retirees that had announced their candidacy for president of the International Union. Both that I'm aware of were former staff, international staff, and were well versed in contract negotiations. When the monitor couldn't figure out whether our Constitution allowed it or not, so he just kind of kicked the question over to President Ray Curry, who said, "Oh, of course we can't have retirees running against me." So you know, that issue is decided by an interpretation of the Constitution. At the convention, we actually brought it to the convention floor, trying to get retirees the right to run for International Executive Board. You have to understand that retirees actually make up more than half of our union right now. You know, our active numbers have fallen so far that retired members outnumber active members. But retirees have a institutional knowledge of the fights and the struggles for the contract gains that were accomplished through the decades that you know, some active members might not remember or have not researched to find out about.
And there have been some important strikes, Volvo, GM strike. What have the lessons of these strikes been? Because these workers have voted down concession contracts in some cases, and there's been support for these strikes all over, not just in the United States, but internationally.
Yeah, there's been a lot of working class support for strikes, and last year we saw kind of an uptick in strike activity. So, you know, take the Volvo contract, for instance. They voted down their contract by 90%. Well, actually, they were out on strike for 2 weeks, came back before they knew what was in the contract. They were called back to work, and then they turned around and voted that contract down by 90%, which put them back out on strike for another several weeks. Then they were offered another tentative agreement, but didn't bring them back to work. Just offered them the agreement and waited for the ratification to decide whether they were going back to work. And they voted it down by 90% again. And, you know, the fourth time it actually turned out to be the charm for Volvo workers. And it wasn't so charming. They had been worn down by the company and the International Union in their contract negotiations. They did not get what they had hoped for. Now, you know, if you go forward to the John Deere strike, it was a very similar situation, except that after voting the contract down by 90%, there were contract improvements in each successive offering, each successive tentative agreements. And while they didn't get everything they wanted, the last one did pass by 60% margin. And it brought back cost of living allowance, which is huge right now as prices are soaring. You know, John Deere workers are now protected from inflation. And they fought off an additional tier that was trying to be implemented, where new hires would no longer have a defined benefit pension. So they made some major improvements. There are also some improvements in their piecework formula, which is something that you really have to understand their contract to know what those improvements are. But we've heard reports from Deere workers about those improvements. So there's a tale of two different negotiating strategies. One where you just vote until you get it right, and the other where you keep rejecting the contract until they get it right. So we're making progress.
And one of the issues that's come up is the issue, obviously, of corruption of top union officials and this labor management collaboration, and also that, in fact, while these top officials were taking money from these joint projects or from the other things, they were pushing concession contracts. What did that have to do with concession bargaining? You think that was part of it?
Well, there's a huge factor in concession bargaining. We've had a paradigm shift in the UAW right around the early 1980s, when we went from confrontational bargaining, where the union would bargain in the best interest of the workers and try and get the most that they could out of the company for the workers, to one where they were bargaining cooperatively, basically sitting on the same side of the table, trying to protect and save jobs rather than offering concessions to do that. But unfortunately, we've seen our membership numbers, especially in auto, precipitously declined since the early 1980s. So, in 1979, we had 1.5 million UAW members, the vast majority of them in auto. And to fast forward to today, we have under 400,000 UAW members, active workers, and probably about 1/3 of those are in auto.
And this issue of outsourcing, I know that jobs at auto plants have been outsourced to separate contractors, and you have now an effort to build non-union plants with electric vehicle plants, and that is something the auto companies are doing. Was there any plan of how to fight back and how to stop this outsourcing of jobs, and also these new electric car facilities being built on substandard contracts?
Yeah, that's a huge issue that we're going to have to confront. And is there a plan? I'm not privy to a plan, but a lot is going to depend on the outcome of the upcoming elections. So if we have somebody that has no vision, that wants to continue with the cooperative arrangement that we've had with the companies, we're going to see substandard contracts like what we've seen before, with the spin-offs of Delphi and Visteon, and those companies go bankrupt and ultimately become some other entity, like so get bought out by independent vulture capitalists, and they just try and squeeze every nickel out of it. We should try and bring those operations back under the umbrella of the national agreements and make everybody whole and equal in the eyes of the union and the company once again.
And you have a situation in some plants, I've been told, where the workers who are coming in, new workers in an auto plant, are making wages comparable with McDonald's, $15 an hour, $15 an hour, and they're working in an UAW auto assembly plant. How does that
Yeah, well, let me start by saying there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. And if you're working a full-time job, you should get a living wage, whether it's at McDonald's or in a auto plant. But I've worked in both fast food industries and now for 33 years in the auto industry. And the pace of the assembly line in auto is considerably faster than in the fast food assembly business. But I will say that auto jobs had traditionally been seen, at least since the 1940s, as more the ability to raise a family on them was truly a driver of prosperity in our country. So fast forward to today, and you have temporary workers now that are making starting wages on par with, as you said, with fast food workers, and they also are in precarious situations where they're not protected by the just cause clause in the contracts while they're on their temporary status, which can be for 2 years. So it's like being on probation for 2 years. When I started 33 years ago, I had a 90-day probationary period, at which time I became full seniority, and I had a 18-month path to top pay. Before that, it was 90 days to top pay. So we've been progressively our contracts have been progressively getting worse throughout the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s, and now it's time to turn that around. But to turn it around, we're going to need the membership to take control of this union and demand that they get the representation, that demand that they get the contracts that are going to serve them well for a career in the auto industry.
And one of the issues that came up at the convention that your group was fighting for was the increase in strike pay. Why don't you talk about what happened before the convention and then during the convention?
Yeah, that was a big win for our efforts. First of all, we had over 24 local unions representing, I believe, somewhere around 40% of the UAW active workforce, and that passed this resolution calling for an increase in strike pay to $400 per week, and for the strike benefits to begin on day 1 of the strike rather than day 8 of the strike, which is what it has traditionally been. And we actually had a preemptive victory on that because the International Executive Board voted to increase strike pay to $400 per week, which really was a shot in the arm for our brothers and sisters on strike at the Case New Holland plants in Burlington, Iowa, and Racine, Wisconsin. So the International Executive Board saw what the membership was clamoring for, and they preemptively raised that strike pay. But at convention, we were able to pull that resolution out of committee and bring it up for debate and a vote to start strike pay on day 1 and include that $400 number. And we had a vigorous debate on it, and ultimately it passed. So that was something that has never happened in recent memory, is for not only something to be brought out of committee that was shelved by the administration caucus, but also to get it approved by the delegates to the convention. So that was a huge win on both fronts. And then the following day, one of the brothers that is on strike at Case New Holland, he asked for a resolution calling for $500 per week strike pay. And that was brought out of committee, and it passed also. That was on Wednesday. And on Thursday, The administration caucus had whipped the votes of the delegates that were, kind of under their thumb, and called for it to be reconsidered, that vote to be reconsidered on Thursday evening. And when the vote was reconsidered, it was rejected for the $500 strike pay. So we took $100 a week out of the pockets of striking workers just overnight.
And the strike fund is what, over $800 million that you have?
Yeah, it's approaching $830 million.
So what did they argue? I mean, because that's a massive strike fund.
They were arguing that it was going to bankrupt the strike fund. If one or more of the auto companies went out on strike next year, that we were going to bankrupt the strike fund. The problem is that they've been relying on the interest and earnings from the strike fund for their general fund operations, and also the amount of money that a good portion of the money that goes into the strike fund gets rebated back out, split between the local and international. So if the strike fund falls below 500 million, those rebates stop, and that would be honestly, it would be devastating to the budgets of the local unions, and certainly to the budget of the international union. But we need to figure out a mechanism to be able to support striking workers, and use the tool, the strongest tool that we have in our toolbox, to get contract gains. So that was, it was a false argument. That extra $100 was not going to bankrupt the strike fund, and it does give us stronger leverage at the bargaining table.
And another issue that's been raised is the issue of the auto workers in Mexico, Soleo Auto GM workers, and internationalism. I mean, your union is connected to auto workers around the world. GM in Korea, GM in South Africa, Ford is all over the world. And at the GM strike, the auto workers in Mexico actually took some solidarity action to support the GM workers. What has that been the effect on the local, and why weren't these GM Mexican auto workers invited to the UAW convention?
Well, I can't get into the minds of the International Executive Board and figure out why they weren't invited, but I have the utmost respect for the workers that formed their international independent union at the GM Silao plant, Cinta, and I may be saying it wrong. Anyway, Israel Cervantes, he took a stand and led a slowdown at the GM plant in Mexico while auto workers were on strike in the UAW against GM. GM was trying to keep their profits afloat a little bit during the strike by pressing the Mexican auto workers to put out more, and they pushed back against that, and Israel got fired for his activism in support of UAW members. And rather than just taking that as a defeat, Israel organized, and much like Chris Smalls in Amazon organized after getting fired, Israel used that opportunity to build an independent labor union at the GM Silao plant, and now they have a first contract. They kicked out the company union there, and it may have something to do with the fact that kicking out a company union might come in vogue if delegates and rank and file workers in the UAW got to know more about that.
Well, under the Taft-Hartley, you're not supposed to have solidarity actions. They're illegal. Yet what you have had happening in the UAW for many years, decades, is these part plants have gone on strike, sometimes against concession contracts, and they're supplying parts to the major auto companies, and there hasn't been any kind of solidarity action. You see that as an important tool to link up all workers in the auto industry and fight back against concession bargaining?
Yeah, frankly, parts manufacturers, the workers in those plants have an incredible amount of power. Uh, they have been uh, told that they're less important than assembly because they're just one little part in the process. But that one little part in the process can shut down the entire process. So that gives a small number of workers an incredible amount of leverage by threatening the profits not only of their own company but of the major auto manufacturers all across the country. So I see hopefully we can use that leverage to try and gain a foothold, not only in the parts manufacturing, but also into the auto companies that we have failed to organize so far and across the South. I think that's the strongest way to go about organizing new members is hit them where it has a resounding effect, an echo effect.
And there is now a danger of a world war. There's an effort to surround Russia and also China. GM makes more cars in China than they do in the United States. I mean, these auto companies are in big time, and also other U.S. companies in China. That's the rise of nationalism and also fascism in this country. Was there any debate or discussion about that? Because Trump and the Republican Party say that they claim to represent working people. Was that reflected at all in debate or discussion at the convention, what to do about the rise of racism and fascism, xenophobia, this kind of thing?
Frankly, there was not. And there could have been, but the debates that did happen, that did take place, took time. So a lot of time was spent on those debates, and also on the last day of the convention, a lot of time was wasted in a circus of nominations for international trustee. There hasn't been a contested election for international trustee in probably 50 years or more. Nobody has heard of a contested election for international trustee until this convention. And on the last day of the convention, I actually ran for international trustee, and the administration caucus had whipped their votes, and they played this game of multiple nominations for the same person. So my opponent from the administration caucus side was the rules were that you could get two nominations, have two nomination speeches, and then after that, anybody that tried to nominate you again would be ruled out of order. Well, there were over 60 delegates that got up and gave nomination speeches, and then at the end would say, and I nominate Dana Davidson, who was the opponent, the candidate for the administration caucus, and that circus, then they'd be ruled out of order by the chair. But that circus wasted a lot of time, and that was time that could have been spent on looking through the other resolutions that were in the book. We only got to one of the proposed resolutions on had to do with reproductive rights, but we didn't get into anything about war or racism or any of the other resolutions that were submitted, in part because of the extended debate on other issues, and in part because of the circus that they made out of the nominations process that morning. And it also, President Curry did not give a State of the UAW speech, which is unheard of for the President of the Union not to give a State of the UAW speech at the Constitutional Convention. It's the first time it's ever happened that I've heard of.
And you're from Indiana. You live in Indiana. They're just trying to pass a bill that would prevent.
It just did pass it.
Yeah. And what do you think about what's going on with this attack on reproductive rights?
Well, it's it turns the clock back 40 years or more. It's an attack on rights, on the right to privacy, and it's not likely to stop with women's health issues. If you can attack the right to privacy in women's health, then you can attack the right to privacy and for anything, thing that we want to keep private, right? So, other things that could be on the chopping block are contraception. Other things that could be on the chopping block are the right to marry who you want to marry. So, those it's very troubling the direction that this country is headed. We are regressing, and rather than moving forward. So, it's a control issue, and I think it's an unwise move.
And the unions in Indiana, you say that the reproductive rights was a resolution at the convention. What are the UAW and other unions in Indiana doing to fight back, educate, organize members? Because, as you said, this can expand. In fact, the Supreme Court could take away labor rights that we now have, say that they violate the employer's rights. So the danger is a whole-scale attack on any kind of democratic constitutional rights.
Yeah, I'm not sure what unions specifically are doing. I know there are organizations and just ad hoc groups that have come together to fight back. But as long as the legislature is in control, being controlled by a supermajority of folks who want to roll back the clock on these issues of privacy, then it's going to be an uphill battle. And I'm not sure what the solution is. We like to think that the ballot box is the way to approach this, but until we can get rid of that supermajority of regressive-minded legislators and a governor who's going to sign their legislation, then we're going to keep moving backwards instead of forwards.
And so for the first time, they had nomination for candidates. Your organization has nominated a candidate, a slate. What does that process look like? And how are the members going to be able to hear from these candidates and have a real democratic discussion debate on candidates for election, and when will it be?
Oh, that's a very exciting development. So, there were 5 people nominated for international president. There were a couple for secretary treasurer, several for vice president. I don't have the number right in front of me, but so now those candidates have to get their name out there. Now UAWD, the organization that I helped found, is working on a democratic endorsement process. And we've endorsed 3 candidates so far and have another 4 candidates up for endorsement at our meeting tomorrow. And so, our slate is going to be prepared. We're working on getting our slate's name out there. But there's going to be also some equalizing ability by putting candidates' campaign literature in Solidarity magazine, and it's going to be mailed out to every UAW member. So they'll have that opportunity to meet the candidates, through their campaign literature. But also the Monitor is scheduling a forum. Now, it's not unclear right now whether that forum is going to be only for presidential candidates, or whether it's going to be expanded to other executive board candidates. It's not clear in the rules yet, but that's going to be a video platform where UAW members can watch it live, or it'll be saved on the monitor's website so it can be shared. And that's an opportunity for the members to get to know their candidates. And other than that, we're going to be raising money to try and be able to send out leaflets and or do mailers and pass out leaflets at plant gates and things of that nature to let the membership know who our candidates are.
And in the past, you've used social media yourself at previous conventions to videotape your presentations at the UAW convention, challenging and raising issues. And that has played a factor, obviously, in auto workers getting information about contracts and bringing workers together to have a debate and discussion. The convention was not broadcast to the members, even though the members paid for the convention. That's something that could have happened for members to actually see a convention. How do you see social media and democratic use of communication by the membership to increase the power and the education of the union?
Well, it's a tool. It's a tool that the members should be able to watch. But I can tell you from experience, live streaming the entire convention is people are going to lose interest. When you have lulls in the action, so to speak, people tend to lose interest. So I think the best approach is for guests and delegates and alternates to be able to live stream and share those videos on Facebook, like I have done before. That gives an opportunity for members to take more bite-sized pieces of the convention. Really not lose the attention span that an 8-hour-long live stream would have. One thing the UAW does do is they put up the speeches from politicians on their website, but they don't do much broadcasting of debate. That's left to the delegates themselves and alternates. Now, on the last day of the convention, there was a crackdown and live streaming was not allowed. They didn't stop us from recording for posting at a later date, but they did come and accost people that were recording, saying, hey, your live streaming's not allowed. When the sergeant at arms would come over there and you'd have to show them that, hey, I'm recording, I'm not live streaming. And, there, like I said, there was a crackdown and that was unfortunate. And I think the reasoning behind the crackdown was because they were planning on playing games and going back to some of their traditional methods. And they didn't want the members to see that. But members are going to learn about it.
And I also understand the reporters there, the UAW Administration Caucus was afraid of allowing them to even be in the convention. They had them corralled in a separate room. They're apparently terrified. And also the WSWS website is getting a lot of hits. They're worried about them. It sounds like the bureaucracy or the leadership is terrified of a real opening up of the union. They see that as a threat to them, their control.
Yeah, they definitely do. But I do want to comment on WSWS now that you brought them up. That's an organization that would love to tear apart the union and try and reform it and reframe it in some other entity. But our whole goal is to take the union that we have and make it work for the workers, not to dismantle it. So we have a very wide difference of opinion on the approach to what we do with not only the UAW, WSWS attacks other unions as well in the same manner.
And their idea was that the union is a capitalist organization. It's controlled by the capitalists. It supports the Democratic Party. It supports capitalism. So workers should form these separate rank and file committees. Why are they running in the union election if they have that position?
I don't understand it. Yeah, but maybe, I guess it's easier to dismantle from the inside. If the best way to rob a bank is to own it, right?
And of course, I guess the UAW Administration Caucus would be happy if they weren't running, because actually in an election, you can actually have your candidates out there, but you see hope of reforming the UAW, making it do what it should be doing?
Yeah, I saw hope before this convention, and just being able to have some semblance of democracy and actually get some things passed at this convention gives me incredible hope. The membership, I think, has an opportunity to take back their union. Now it's up to them to do it. UAWD is here to help, and we're trying to organize rank and file workers to do just that. But the workers are going to have to step up and do their part to take back their union, because this is their union. It doesn't belong to the Administration Caucus. It doesn't belong to the International Executive Board. This union belongs to every member of the UAW, and every member of the UAW has a responsibility to help bring our union back from the abyss that we've been in.
And the major growth of the UAW has been in the graduate students, as you were saying earlier, 80,000, 20% of the membership. How was that growth affected, and their role affected at the UAW convention?
Well, there were graduate student workers that were organizing with UAWD. There were graduate student workers that were loyal to the Administration Caucus. So, I would say there were that sector was balanced on both sides. We're hopeful that we can continue working together and building a rank and file movement that is going to take back our union and start bringing changes to the everyday lives of UAW members that they desperately need. It's going to take the members getting involved and helping to bring that level of ownership of their union back to the rank and file, and have some shop floor militancy again.
And lastly, UAW caseworkers are still on strike. They've been on strike since May. Has there been a national campaign by the UAW to make sure that they're supported, and there's support throughout the country and internationally? And also, what do you think can be done to support these caseworkers by the rank and file members?
There has not been a national push to help them, and they are in a tight spot. It's a difficult company to negotiate with, because they have several plants that are non-union, many more non-union plants than the two UAW plants that are in operation now. So their profit margin hasn't been impacted as much as, for instance, the John Deere profit margins were impacted by their strike. So that makes it a harder negotiation. We need to do a better job of organizing the unorganized to give more power to those workers. But increasing the strike pay to 400 is going to help them sustain themselves. What we need to do is spread the word around the UAW that this strike is going on, because the UAW has done very little to promote it. UAWD has been running some promotions of it, putting up articles, newspaper articles that were locally produced. There's also a GoFundMe for it's one of the engineers that quit when the workers went on strike in Burlington, Iowa, at local 807. One of the engineers that worked for the company said, "I'm walking out with them," and then proceeded to start a GoFundMe and help those workers sustain themselves. So that's going on. UAWD Mutual Aid Fund has made a donation to the workers in Racine some grocery cards to help them out. But it's going to take more than that. You know, we're all going to have to step up, and we should be, you know, passing the hat at union meetings and doing gate collections and things like that to help them sustain their picket lines in the face of you know, the assault on their union.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us, Scott. We've been talking with Scott Houldierson. He's a UAW 551 member from Chicago at the Ford plant there, and is co-chair of UAW Members for Democracy, talking about this last convention and issues that they face and the future struggles in the UAW. So thanks for joining us on Work Week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve. And if you want to know more about UAWD, go to uawd.org. And if you want to know more about our slate of candidates, go to uawmembers.org.
Thank you very much. Solidarity.
Solidarity.